Of what we did at that lovely Saturday at our
Retreat.
retreat. So, city administrator, if you would like to facilitate this discussion.
Thank you, council member.
Lovely.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. So this is our first review of the retreat follow-up done by Sageland Strategic, the facilitator for the retreat. This is a draft format, so subject to change completely based off of your feedback. I just wanted to introduce it now and do a quick overview, and then we can circle back in a couple of weeks to revisit it again in case you have any changes or modifications you'd like to make. Long-term, we would like to see the vision and mission statement at least adopted via resolution or motion. That way we can start to publicize it and it kind of lives the test of time. The goals don't necessarily need to be formally adopted, but we certainly can do that as well. So with that, we start out with this retreat report. There was a purpose and summary just of the topics and agenda that we all reviewed together. And then going on to the second page, I'm going to jump straight to goals. This top 5 goals list is based off of that exercise we did towards the end, where everyone individually prioritized what their goals would be based off of the longer list. This compiled with the additional goals is the full list of goals that Zach and I compiled based off of the retreat takeaways. So the top 5 goals identified by the city council during the retreat was in order: improve traffic on 410, revitalize Main Street. Number 3, encourage indoor and outdoor recreation. Number 4, assess and address growth. And number 5, preserve Buckley's identity. There's several strategies that were identified to do these, as well as the other additional goals outlined, which were prioritize and execute on all of our goals and projects, communicate, work with external organizations, and form ad hoc committees, and then close the loops on requests and projects. So a heavy emphasis on communication and transparency. And then there were also several projects that were identified. And a lot of the projects, when we pulled out the whole list, were duplicative at some point. So we kind of synthesized it down to have this list. And then this is coming to you at a future meeting in a different format that's more of just a grid with those top 5 goals. I wanted to make sure, just quick temperature check, does anyone feel like something that they felt really strongly about isn't noted in the top 5? Or do you have an initial reaction that you would like to see added or reconsidered this evening? And then let's start with that, since we had 2 hands raised.
Councilmember Green.
Yeah, I noticed prioritize public safety was down in the middle of additional goals. I'd like to see that moved up to the top 5 goals, and I don't really want to take any away. I mean, we just call it top goals and have 6.
Councilmember Burbank.
I was going to mention the prioritize public safety, and actually I was going to mention the be financially sustainable, especially after hearing that we are going to have to figure out how to cover our budget. I was quite surprised that encourage indoor and outdoor recreation was number 3.
Anybody else?
I would mimic Amanda and think that financially stable be number 1. Oh, I said I would agree that the financially stable could be number 1 on the goals.
And I can say, looking at this top 5, I can think of only one thing I put in that top 5. So I don't know how this got created. But I will say, well, actually, I'll say it in a minute, because I'm going to ask everybody about their retreat experience. Anybody else?
I agree that those 2 should be moved up. They're important, especially public safety and especially being financially sustainable. I think if we aren't financially sustainable, the other things won't happen. So.
Agreed.
Councilmember Sundstrom.
We need to just take a look at each of the, see which is an issue right now. And if we work on the others, will kind of, as Councilmember Anderson said, they will fall into place when we become financially sustainable. Right now, as we're seeing, we're living hand to mouth. It's kind of like oh, here's a paycheck. Wow, we're gonna have fun with it. And then, oh, we don't have any money for groceries next week. You know, I can't stand that. I like more structure. And that's what we need, is more structure in how we do things. You know, and I'll give you an example. The fire department has a contract with Rainier School to do fire work for them. And some of the other things. They get that contract money to go into their pool to buy new equipment. That's how, when we come up with $1 million fire truck, gee, we got the money there. I see pockets of money here and there. I don't see a policy that says they should be there. Somebody just made up their mind to put them there. That's not the way you run a budget. And we're really lax on that. You know, I mean, it is the council's responsibility to make sure that happens. But being financially stable is a big deal, because it will take care of all of our problems.
Councilmember Anderson, do you have something?
No, sorry.
Okay. If I might, Mrs. Brunel, at this point, I will just say that I am not a big fan of retreats. I'm not a big fan of organized facilitated talk. That's just in my nature. But I will say that this group, it was way more palatable than I thought it would be. And I thought that he was very professional, very personable, very good at what he did. And looking for feedback on that.
I think we said towards the end, I think Marvin actually said it. It was nice to hear that we really are all on the same page and we want the same things, and just putting in that work on how we're going to get there was awesome. To really lay out those steps was good to see. And I think he did a great job of facilitating that and letting us be the leaders of it instead of him preaching to us. So I like that.
I agree. Councilmember Green.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. I thought it was really productive. We got a lot done in just a few hours there. We didn't have to do any basket weaving, which I thought was a bonus. No arts and crafts like the last time that you missed. Yeah, but it was a great use of a Saturday. So
I kind of miss holding hands and making a circle. Kind of my disappointment.
And
No,
I
I
don't know
thought
what
it
the
was-
process is for this. I don't know if this type of thing that we do has to go out to bid or how that works, but I would gladly sit down with that service again.
Mhm.
And time well spent
Mhm.
on a Saturday.
I think the advantage to any kind of a facilitated talk is that it keeps us from drifting. And we go into little zones that we are wasting time a lot. So I thought the time was well used. It's pretty intense. We moved right along.
I agree.
good lunch too.
No complaints.
Nice breakfast, good lunch.
I'll be sure to pass all those comments on to him. I know that he'll really appreciate that and have him watch back on the YouTube video. That way he can hear it himself. So thank you for that. I will, so based off of what he had mentioned, because I don't think that the way that the council provided their lists wasn't necessarily in order of importance. It was just 3 things jotted down. He did say that these top 3 were a heavy top 3. And then the two that you mentioned framed out what he saw on the majority of the list. So prioritize public safety and be financially sustainable were also mentioned by other council members.
Mhm.
I thought top 5 was a nice number. And so we did go through and tally how many things got votes for each. And that's how we got those. But we can either move to a top 7, or if after looking at this, council wants to digest it a little bit and decide if you want to try to reduce in some areas to get to more of a top 5 goal. We can alter this report any way that you would like in order to best reflect what your goals and priorities are. Moving on to the mission and vision, and sorry, one more thing.
I like the fact, the mission and vision go on one page. And you say, oh.
You're gonna love the poster that he's putting together that puts all of this onto one
Yeah.
page. It looks just awesome. So,
And you can, the more you talk.
Yeah.
The more it gives you a place to hide.
mhm.
It's gotta be specific.
And this project list isn't exhaustive. This is just some things that council identified for us as staff to be able to get started and to start working on future priorities. But there's certainly a lot for all of these goals for additional projects that we're going to see that ties to those. So going over to the mission and vision, here they are in writing, as well as the guiding principles. So again, please just take some time and look over it, and we'll bring this back probably at the next study session with the finalized posters and graphics based off of the feedback tonight, maybe adding those top 2 so you know what that all looks like on one page, and then decide where to go from there.
Councilmember
I
Central.
would just change the vision. By saying Buckley, the city of Buckley, a rich natural heritage community, is committed to meeting the needs of its citizens.
In the
Move
vision.
the is from in front of behind Buckley and move it behind community.
I agree, and I
Yeah.
agree with, yes, I don't think this was captured the way that we talked about it. And if you remember, we spent a lot of time on these.
Yeah.
Around the table, around the table, around the table. And good catch, Councilmember Central. And as city administrator said, we shall, at a future study session, finalize this.
Yeah. That's
As
pretty cool.
As part of your thoughts for the next month, consider the impact of the word rich on future grant applications. That's some feedback that I received from an outside perspective. Although I understand
Yeah.
the intention for rich natural,
Yeah.
natural heritage, you're talking about the richness of the natural heritage. I think it could be construed differently.
That's a good catch too.
I agree.
I'll just take it out.
Okay.
Just pick it out.
Natural heritage.
So what I'm hearing is we are gonna spend probably 20 minutes on a vision statement.
Again,
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta get it right.
Yep.
Because besides nature, we've got culture.
Exactly.
So
Councilmember
there's-
Green.
Also, the mission statement seems to be missing something grammatically. Can't quite put my finger on it, but I'd ask
okay.
the teachers to my left and right to chime in.
I can't figure it out. I already was looking.
Yeah.
Yep.
A whole lot less work than we put in last time when we get to it.
Yeah.
So we'll bring this back to the next study session.
Outstanding. And we're good to go for, so what was one that we put on hold will now be the next topic, Foothills Trail Association presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shayla Miles. I'm the Executive Director of the Foothills Rails to Trail Coalition, and sitting next to me is Robin Partington. She's been the lead really on this pavilion project for the last several years. I'm here tonight to really just, present you with a few updates and talk to you a little bit more about this project. Can we go to the next slide, please? Oh,
You can do it that way, or yes, all right.
thank you.
Uh-huh.
Fancy. So tonight I'd really like to discuss a new location for this pavilion. I also, because I know that there's, this project has been ongoing for the last several years and has, gone on through various, election cycles. So I just want to make sure everyone on council is up to date on the project, as well as share, a few updates, from the coalition's end. And then I'd also like to be able to answer any questions you all have tonight on this project. Okay, so again, because this project has spanned many years, just a quick kind of scope and intention of the pavilion. Really what it is to mark Buckley as the historic birthplace of the Foothills Trail and honor Doc Tate in his vision in developing a trail. It's to provide Foothills Trail information to users, to celebrate the coalition, its partners, volunteers, and donors, to provide the trail and community members an amenity that is a resting and gathering place. And then finally, we want to tell the history of the coalition, the trail, the land, Buckley, the railroad, et cetera. So many different goals for this project. Additional relevant background is in 2021, the city passed resolution number 21-18 supporting the pavilion. It really, the former plan location was in a spot between the trail and the Foothills Historical Museum, and there's a sign that you can see. This is the plan location. So this is obviously not the current location that we're thinking of, which I'll detail a little bit more here in a moment. And then just to provide some additional context, there's been a lot of changes for the Foothills Coalition as an organization in the past 6 months. They hired an executive director, me, in November, and we've had new board members. We have a complete new executive board, and we've also committed to a strategic planning process and a 5-year work plan. So we're in progress of completing that. So all of this is to say is a lot of changes and professionalization in our particular organization. So I want to start with the new proposed location, and Courtney and Aaron have both heard and seen this information. This is a conceptual artist rendering, by the way, and so you can see up there on the bottom right image that you have the not pictured is 410, which is would be up top, but you have the parking lot and then the trail itself, and then across from the trail would be the pavilion. And really there's a lot of benefits to having this pavilion in this new location. It's just, again, a great community amenity to provide at a trailhead location. You can have people, provide a covered space for people getting on and off their bikes or getting ready to use the trail, as well as, with the future White River pedestrian bridge. This is really kind of the gateway and entryway into the rest of Pierce County. And so I just think it's a win-win for everyone to have this pavilion located here. So some other updates. The coalition, as we mentioned, has been working on this project for 3 years, but really now we're undertaking a new phase. We have invested in a planning study. And what this planning study aims to do really is understand community input to inform a fundraising plan. It will be led by a consultant. We've hired JP Fundraising Solutions, and they've done 50 or so capital campaigns in the greater Tacoma and Pierce County area. So they're really well regarded. As part of the process of this planning study, we'll be interviewing Buckley and beyond community members through focus groups and interviews and surveying. And we also hope to involve the city of Buckley, you all, Courtney, Aaron, in this process. And the final thing that I want to say is, again, it's really the focus of this is going to give us a roadmap for successful fundraising to be able to undertake this project successfully. And, you know, the Foothills Board is really committed to this project. There's a lot of interest in getting this done and getting this done in the next like year, ideally, maybe 2 years. But again, this project is now part of our strategic plan and 5-year work plan. So we're serious about it, doing it. All right. So with that, that's really all the updates I have, but I wanted to make sure that that you all had time to ask questions tonight about this project.
Councilmember Green.
No question, just comment. I think that the location, kind of makes a lot of sense. I think it's a good spot.
Thank you. I agree.
I would just state that in that same area, in a different type of structure, over the last few years, we've had. What was it, music in the park or whatever it is? Would that facility, when completed, be a viable space to have that same event?
So I guess the short answer is we are not quite sure. As you can see from this image up on the screen, there's really nothing inside the pavilion pictured at this point. That's because we really wanted to get community input to inform everything that we want to showcase. That is going to be the kind of the meat, as it were, of the inside of the pavilion. So, I mean, you know, the coalition has a number of goals and objectives with this project. And it could be the case that this ends up, you know, there being space for like a mobile stage to be wheeled in and out of. I'm just not sure yet, but Courtney and I have talked about this, and we do plan on sharing the results of the planning study with the city. And definitely would then at that point tell the city how we want to proceed, provide more detail as to the inside contents, and then also let the city be potentially a part of, you know, if this could be a place where a stage could be, you know, moved in and out of, again, within the confines of the other structures, internal structures we have planned, then we would hope to work together on that for sure.
Thank you. Other council questions? Councilmember Sundstrom.
When I came on the council 9 years ago, this subject came up. And I talked to one of the previous council members, and he said it had been decided that they would allow this long before I came on the council. So this is not just 2 years old. This is about 15 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a long time in the works. I guess what we're bringing now is, again, a more professional structure to the coalition as the driving organization behind this effort. And I have a background in fundraising, and that's really what this project needs at this point, is a focus on that, because this project is going to cost upwards of $250,000, likely more with all the inflation and increases. And so that's not nothing, right? It's going to take a lot of effort to raise that money.
I want you to understand, I think trails are a really good thing for a city. I go a lot of places, or did, Sun Valley. They did not want that trail. Now people will pay $100,000 or more extra on their house to be on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
So trails are, I mean, I ran field trials with retrievers. And so I went to a lot of different places, and they would have the nighttime events, farmers markets, those kinds of things. Those are two things you can't have enough of, the trail and farmers market. But in turn, when the council made the decision to put this closer to the museum, they were thinking of the historical value of this. You know, and I drive the trail a lot or along it. You see the people that use it. You pretty much see the whole thing all the way through. Why don't you have something like this on the other end?
Because we haven't raised the money for this one yet, so raising money for two.
What I'm saying, now, we're putting a lot of money into this.
Mm.
And if it isn't our money, it's still money that if we would have gotten that grant, we could have spent on our citizens. So this is costing our citizens a lot of money in standard of living type things. And I personally liked it when they said it was gonna go over where this show. Because that means it's part of our historical. This is an entirely separate setup. It's kind of a monument out of the middle of nowhere.
Mm.
And that's, so, I can't support it being there. I can support it being in the historical part of the city. And, but not out there.
Any other
Just think
council,
about that for a while.
any other council comments or questions for our guests? Councilmember Rose.
I would imagine with this, you not, right now, you don't know what you're going to put inside the pavilion, but I would imagine you have a good idea, a concept of attributing to Dr. Tate the formation of the trail originally and the development as it progressed.
Yes, and the Foothills Historical Museum has been instrumental and will continue to be instrumental in being able to tell that story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the fact that the museum sits there is not really so much that it's a historical site chosen. It was just a building available. So we have to keep in mind that that ground right there is part of the railroad, which is historical.
Mhm.
But the rest of it, the buildings and outbuildings and Buckley Hall and whatnot, were
Yeah.
warehouses that serve the
Correct.
railroad. So I don't think it's out of zone, your pavilion concept, your placement. Because the whole city of Buckley, I think, is historical, downtown and everything, so.
I appreciate your comment, and I think, the historical aspect won't be lost by moving it, down the street. I agree with you. And the Historical Museum, again, is a big partner and they're in support. In fact, they made a very generous donation after we had decided to move this project to show their support. So keep in mind that telling this history is only one of the goals or intents of this project. This is really going to be a community asset, right? This is a huge asset to the community, to the city of Buckley, and to all the trail users is the intent behind it.
I agree.
And I'll point out that the only person I believe present in this room who even knows Dr. Tate would be Councilmember Rose. And I have my father
Right.
used to go to Dr. Tate.
My dad was.
I never met the man.
My mother and dad started the museum, so I had a particular passion for that, but they're doing a good job, I think, so far, and I'm sorry. But they're working hand in hand with you, as they are with several other organizations, to try to hang on to what we have before we lose it.
Yeah.
Things go by so fast, and you think, gee, I wish we would save that old railroad station, the original depot. That was a tragedy. My dad was just beside himself trying to save that, and the city at that time had no vision about that, so they decided not to save it, but it was gone in a minute. And I'm glad to see the preservation and continuation of our history is happening. I'm really excited about that. So thank you.
Other council questions or comments regarding the Foothills Trail Dr. Tate project? I would like to thank those who came to present.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda will be City Hall remodel update.
So tonight, I just wanted to provide a brief update on where we are with the project in terms of permitting as well as financing and provide a overview of the financing plan that was provided a couple of months ago. We have made it through the hearing examiner review. That hearing occurred the day before council approved the revised code for quasi judicial code amendments. And so you will see the design review for this project. And it will be coming forward. The first meeting in April, we realized after we distributed this memo that in order to meet our public hearing requirements, we do need an additional week. So it'll be heard and reviewed by you on April 11th. Prior to that, we'll provide another update. The original goal was that this would go to bid in early April. And the reason for that is that when you tend to get projects in during the first portion of the year, you tend to get better bids. So to keep costs as low as possible, we were looking to have this go out to bid in early April. This will push us to mid-April. The last update I provided showed that the cost of the project has increased from the anticipated 1.55 to 1.637. The change is largely attributed to the metal roof going over the entire project, being completely replaced, going over the entire project. That's $90,000. In addition, we have a $40,000 parking lot proposed. We've requested that the architect use bid alternates for those so that we have basically an option once we go to bid of whether or not we do or do not want to move forward with those portions of the project to keep costs low. For now, we have presented the financing plan that was originally provided. And I do want to just start by disclaiming, we've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of council meetings regarding the state of the general fund. The money that you see outlined here for the financing for City Hall cannot be used for general fund. So these dollars are dollars that are set aside, REIT funding specifically for capital projects or for parks projects. So knowing that, as well as the sewer capital reserves, those capital reserves are all very healthy. That is their allocation based off of the percentage share of administrative costs that our administrative team, which would be housed in this new City Hall, used to support those different utilities. And then we have not recommended the use of any ARPA dollars, again, because those are general dollars. And so right now we've identified 1.552. If the bid comes in higher, there are some options. We've outlined the other projects currently funded by those set aside funds, the 307, 308 down below. Council could choose to reallocate from some of those projects. Council could also choose to dip into reserves. And we will bring forward those options once we get back the bid results. So with that, council members, I am happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments regarding City Hall remodel update? Councilmember Sundstrom.
You are the RCW for Hall of Wheat and Wheat Bound.
Not with me, but yes, there is.
Would you send it by email to me?
Absolutely.
Because that's a good example of what Porky said. That and the PSC for these. And I understand every organization has to put their fair share into this. But I don't see anybody else putting in other than the city-owned enterprises. I don't see anything in there from roadways. Of course, we got no money in roadways because we never put up a bond issue to see if we could get some money in roadways. And this is what Porky's saying, you know, we gotta finance it. And we just can't say, oh, well, here's a pile here, here's a pile here, we'll use it because it says we can. And I'd like to know what the read. I'm not happy with, money from infrastructure going to me, what is a wasting asset.
For the rest of the council's edification, and I am deficit in this, can somebody please explain what a REIT is?
Real estate excise tax.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the city minister? Councilmember Burbank.
I would just say that if my personal opinion is that if we can't, like, if we have to dip into other funds, I do not want it to take away. I don't want to dip into the Miller Park. I don't want to touch anything that has to do with Miller Park at all. That's just my, but otherwise that was it.
Councilmember Ursano.
I'm trying to think of how to say it, so. I guess my question is, if we're gonna go out and ask for a levy lid lift. And everything, how are we gonna explain to the citizens that we're spending this money on City Hall? In a project, but we're not making any effort to try to cut anything to help that deficit.
Point well taken, and I will say along those lines, how do we say that we want to pay for a parking lot at Jefferson and 410 at the same time if we're talking about having to use ARPA funds to smooth out, or I forget what the verbiage was, which I totally understand the verbiage and the accounting item. Just don't remember what it was. So, I mean, these are things that we have to discuss. I mean, these are real things.
Sorry, I think it would be really important for us to make sure that our outreach includes significant public education regarding where the funds that are being used for City Hall could go if not being used for a capital project. The levy lid lift would be subsidizing the general fund, and the dollars that are being outlined here cannot. So that would be the difference is we're talking about two different pots of money. And if we can certainly hold on to these dollars, but they would have to be spent on other type of infrastructure or capital projects, not on staff salaries or anything related to the general fund, which is where we're seeing the deficit that we discussed at the last council meeting. So I think we definitely need to make sure that there was public education so that the public understood why we were continuing to move forward with having a functional City Hall in addition to asking for a levy lid lift. Or it's certainly councils, once we have the bid through, because the contract right now that was approved by council does take the project through bid, assuming the design review is approved, then it will go to bid. And if the bid is higher and not within our comfort, then the council can choose not to fund the project. So there's still options, but I think public education will be very important.
Councilmember
One
Sandstrom.
thing I forgot, I'd like to know the page and the item this REIT money is sitting in. You know, usually when I see a lump of money like that, I ask myself a question. And I didn't find that. So I'd like to know, what page it's on in the budget and the item it is.
Okay.
Any other council comments, questions regarding City Hall update? Hearing and seeing none, moving on to Citizen Advisory Board update.
On February 7th, we presented some options to amend the municipal code where we currently find a Parks Board and Economic Development Board, and recommended repealing and replacing those with a Citizens Advisory Commission and a Senior Advisory Commission. Tonight, we have the draft ordinance that would codify that recommendation. which is attachment 1 in your packet. I also included in the packet under attachment 2 the memo from February 7th, which includes the outline of some work plan items that both of those commissions would be able to carry out. In theory, if not within the first year, what their tasks would be and how we would be marketing the position. The reason that we recommended going with a broader Citizens Advisory Commission is because what I've heard, at least, is historically we haven't had the easiest time recruiting volunteers to commit to multi-year terms. And so we figured it would be best at this time to cast a wide net. And if at any time the council decided that they did want to create, for example, a single arts commission or a commission that was more focused on a specific topic, the code can be amended again. And we, in the same process that we are having right now, a study session, and then the following council meeting could add an additional commission for individuals to apply and be appointed to. If you choose to adopt the ordinance as presented, both of these commissions have 7 members. I wanted to highlight a couple of items in the Citizens Advisory Commission, which is that under the revised 2.54.020, the very last sentence under section 2 is a majority of the members shall be registered members of the senior center. And that was something that was really important to the senior nonprofit board, as well as to city staff, to make sure that the senior population is represented on the senior advisory commission, since they will be responsible for overseeing some of the day-to-day programming of the senior center. As well as that there is an ability for the council at any time to appoint ad hoc members to serve on a specific project or for a specific purpose for any given amount of time. They wouldn't be considered voting members of this commission, but if there was some big project that you wanted additional community input on and you had identified some applicants that weren't already on the commission, you would be able to essentially adjust the commission appointees at any given time. You have anything to add, Erin?
No, that was well said.
Okay.
Any questions?
Have any questions?
Questions or comments from the council regarding Citizen Volunteer Commission boards? Councilmember Green.
Just a comment, and we talked about this yesterday's community services meeting. I think that the structure of the Citizens Commission, with having like a bunch of different things under one banner, your Arts Commission and Parks and Board and what have you. I think it's pretty good. We can start make progress on a lot of things, a lot of different things, while we see if we need to start more commissions. But like the city administrator said, sometimes we have a hard time finding a lot of volunteers for these things. So it's good to get some progress going. And I think that out of this commission, we can see where folks' interests lie for potential future commissions as needed.
Councilmember Anderson.
I should have asked this yesterday, but if they are already associated with a nonprofit or organization downtown, are they able to be on this commission?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely outstanding to put it out there, because there are people that we all know where they chime in, that have passion, that have interest in other issues, and to have given them an opportunity to get involved, to advise council and to advise the city. I think it is a good thing to have this go forward. Anybody else? Councilmember Sundstrom.
This is very ambitious, but I've watched a lot of the boards, commissions, the dysfunction that we've had over the years where nothing really happens. I would suggest before we move forward on this, that we kind of finish up our mission and goal and that laundry list of parking lot items. And there are some in there that I believe we would be better served if we had 4 or 5 people working on it, rather than a commission. Because one of the things that happens all too often is there's a tendency to appoint friends, people that think like you do on these commissions rather than, appointing people who might disagree with you. You know, because they have a different point of view about what they want to see in their city. And it would make people think of a good example, you know, is the finance one. That is a really good opportunity to educate a lot of people on public finance. Because there's a lot of people sitting around this table that don't even understand public finance. You know, and you have to understand it from the standpoint of there are things by law we can't do. But there are things by law we can do. And we need to take a look at those things. But I would prefer that we not go forward on this until we've got the mission statement and those things discussed. Because to me, they fall right together.
Councilmember Green.
I understand Councilmember Sundstrom's perspective on this, but I kind of see it a different way. We have so much stuff on our list of goals and even the parking lot list or whatever we call it. This is, I mean, having a commission like this could be like a force multiplier. I mean, we're going to be, setting the work program. We'll have oversight over it. We can, work through them to get some of the stuff done.
Councilmember Anderson.
I also hear you. However, yes, our mission and vision should get done. And I think we are very close to getting that done. I feel like starting this now, though, is going to just get the word out, have them apply. It's not going to be they're in it next week. I think it is going to be a process. So I feel like in that time that we reach out, we get these people applying and they're interested in it, we will have our mission and vision done. That's how I look at it.
And I would say that I'm not aware of anybody being appointed to something because they're our cronies or they think like us. We appointed the people that applied. And I would like to get a wide swath of folks in this community with all these boards and commissions to step forward. And let's get them involved. Councilmember Anderson.
Also, I think with 7 people on a commission, they are not all going to think the same. So I think there will be different opinions and both sides will be heard. And I feel like they will do their best job at coming to an agreement. But I do think both sides will be heard with 7 people.
Well, your point's well taken because there's 7 people sitting at this table and we don't have the same opinion, nor should we. That would be very scary if that was the case.
That would be.
Anybody else on this topic? Councilmember Sundstrom.
I would disagree with Brandon and Mackenzie. I honestly think, as Mackenzie said, we need to get the critical ones worked on because they will make the rest of them fall into place. And I mean, the finance one, that's a big deal. We need to get that under control. And we need a committee for that. Period. People that understand finance. And that don't necessarily have to mean government finance, just finance. What do we do to make sure we can continue? What do we do to make sure that we have good law enforcement, good public safety? You know, those two things are, to me, the most important. Once we got that, law enforcement eats up 38% of our salary and benefits every year.
Councilmember Green.
I don't disagree with you that those are, some of the most important things we need to look at. I just don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I think we can have a citizens advisory commission working on these things, and then, we can be working on those things or what have you. I think that I don't think that we have to wait till we've solved one thing to move on to other things.
Especially since these are volunteers. This is not an expense of the city. These are people giving of their time to help better our community. And this body can oversee it and reject or accept anything that comes out of that. Anything else on this? Councilmember Burbank.
Can I just get clarification? Councilmember Sundstrom mentioned finance for the citizens committee. We have a finance committee, correct?
A council committee.
Council committee,
Yes.
but there would be a finance. He's proposing I don't know why you're laughing. But he's proposing a
Let's be in
finance
order.
committee for citizens.
I think that I don't want to misinterpret. The council could still appoint an ad hoc committee to oversee any specific project. So if you
Got it.
wanted an ad hoc committee of citizens to review finances, then I suppose we could go ahead and appoint something like that.
Got it.
What I have outlined here in the memo from February 7th does not include any financial review. Aside from maybe recommendations on economic development policies, but it would not be the same as the finance committee that's currently assembled through
Okay,
council.
maybe the budget of the senior center.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, we move on to, thank you, Ms. Snodgrass.
Yeah.
Lodging Tax Advisory Committee update and information.
Right on it. Good evening, council. I have brought this topic to the Finance, Admin and Public Safety Committee previously, so we've touched on it in that committee. But we are gonna move forward with creating our Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. So this is a committee that is required by RCW to be formed once as a population we crossed over 5,000 and do levy the lodging tax, which we have done both of those things. So previously, we were just collecting the tax and we would budget for it in the annual budget. Currently, it's just usually used for maintenance and operations of the museum and the Veterans Memorial. So paying for the electricity and lights and communication, minor repairs and those kind of things has been what the funds have been used to date for. So as part of crossing over 5,000 in population, we're required to establish the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. You'll hear it referred to as the LTAC committee. It is a very specific committee that is required to be a minimum of 5 members. 2 of those members have to be from organizations that collect tax. So hotels, other types of overnight lodging. 2 members have to be people involved in activities authorized to be funded by the tax. The required uses and eligible uses for the funding of the tax are basically to create tourism. So things that draw tourists and people from outside of our city in to stay overnight in our hotels and lodging facilities, to come to events where they spend money at our businesses and that kind of thing. So 2 members from organizations. So those could be anything from such as a chamber or the museum, Foothills Historical Society, or any other organization that then promotes some kind of event or tourism that would draw people in. 1 member is an elected official, and that person then serves as the chair of the committee. And then the RCW does allow and says may include 1 non-voting member who's an elected official of the county in which the city is located. So there could be, if the council so choose, a non-voting member from the elected Pierce County Council. And it says at least 2. So in large cities, they could have more. They could have 3 members or 4. They do have to be equal. So the members from the organizations collecting the tax has to be equal to the number of members using the tax. Yes, Councilmember Green?
What if you can't find 2?
We're going to do our best. We are small, so we don't have a lot of overnight lodging type facilities, but there are at least 2 in town. So we'll start there. And yeah, we're doing a lot of education and promotion to make sure we can try and get people from equal sides.
Mhm.
But those members do have, so if you did have two, you have to have two each. If you had three, you had to have three on each side, so they have to be equal. If you qualify in category A, you collect the tax, you cannot be eligible to be considered as part of the second group, which is the use of the tax. You can only be representing one side or the other on the committee. And so I did list out some of the specific uses that are allowed. So basically tourism marketing, the marketing and operations of special events or festivals. So it could be concert series if they draw people in, any type of other summer activities. Supporting the operations and capital expenditures of tourism related facilities. So that would be, that are owned and operated by municipalities. So that would be our museum. Or operations of tourism related facilities owned and operated by nonprofit organizations. So if there was other types of facilities that were owned in town by nonprofits, they could be eligible as well. So the applicants applying for the use of the city funds of the lodging tax money do have to provide information about how they plan on bringing the tourists in and make estimates of how many they think will be coming and from what distance, how they will be staying or not staying, and keep track of that data. We do have annual reporting that we're required to do to the state. We've been doing that for many years now. So I get data from the museum as far as tourists. It's interesting to find that we have people coming from other countries just to come see the museum. So we could see that definitely with COVID, there was a big, drop because it had to be closed for a while with that and everything. Yeah. But the data is interesting to see how far people have come away. So as far as the application process, most cities tie it with their annual budget process. So they would have the application process open summertime for the applicants to make their requests. The lodging tax committee reviews all of those applications and makes a recommendation to the city council. City council has the final approval, but the city council is also only allowed to approve those applications from the pot of applications that the LTAC recommends to the council. So if the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee recommended 5 organizations for funding, the council can only choose from those 5. There is an AG opinion that says that they could council can make some adjustments to the amount for those organizations, but otherwise they can have to choose only from those 5. They can't say, well, we want to add this one in over here that LTAC didn't recommend. That's not allowed. The city, as a user of the funds for the museum in connection with the Foothills Historical Society, will work with the Foothills Historical Society. We will need to make application for the use of the funds for the museum and the Veterans Memorial as well. So what we're proposing is that we would use a similar form as what you have just discussed for the Citizens Advisory Committee. We would use that also for the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for people to apply. We do have a current section in our code regarding lodging tax. So we would need to amend that and add a section for the creation of the committee on the code. And so that would be our proposal, would be at the next council meeting to bring back a draft ordinance with that new section of code to create the committee. And then in April to bring that ordinance back for approval. And then if that was approved, then late April, we could open up for applicants to the committee and make a lot of phone calls to try and get interest. I feel there's going to be much more interest on the use of the tax because there's much more organizations that could probably come forward for that portion. But the collectors of the tax will be a little more difficult. But and then once that is established, we would create a application process for organizations to apply to receive funding, and then that would coincide with our budget process going forward. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the council? I'll say that this has come up in admin and finance several times over the years. And the trigger is the 5,000 by RCW is 5,000 over 5,000 residents. So something has to be done. And so we're going to have to have somebody on the council be the chair. It's got to be an elected official.
Correct.
So let's start thinking about who would, and I don't imagine that this would meet quite frequently.
No, typically it meets once the applications are turned in for review. If council does choose one that receives the recommendations from the LTAC, wants to make any changes, they can recommend changes back to the LTAC, and then the LTAC could meet again and say yes or no, accept those. So it's kind of a back and forth process if that was the case. Some larger cities sometimes have maybe a secondary, depending on the amount of funds that they have, a secondary process earlier in the year for any, organizations that maybe have come up after. But and then there's the report back from the organizations that are awarded funds. Those are made available and the LTAC can review those. So I would say, it's a couple times a year, probably at most, that the committee meets.
We have to do it based on the RCW, and we have, as far as I'm aware, would an Airbnb qualify as a participant, a lodging place?
It's assuming that they were collecting the lodging taxes and correctly and bringing that in, then they would.
So right now we have the new and improved West Main Buckley, I don't know, what's it called?
The Buckley Inn.
The Buckley Inn, and then our Econo Lodge currently. But we got to do it. So something to think about.
Yes.
Well, and we also need to remember that whoever the elected official is, we have this is gonna be before, will this be before elections? Because it depends on like people whose seats are up, if they're gonna run, or do you know what I mean? Like, just taking that into consideration too.
Yes, the goal would be to hopefully form this committee this spring, early summer.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing and seeing none, let's move on to the Jefferson Street vacation. Introduction.
So first I'll draw your attention to a piece of paper that was left on all of your spots this evening, which is the draft resolution identified in the packet, I believe is attachment 3. So we did provide that. Tonight we have the official introduction, I guess, of this kind of longstanding point of conversation, which is the potential vacation of Jefferson Street. The municipal code outlines the process that cities take. City of Buckley, a lot of this language is borrowed from RCW to vacate a street. The city code does allow for the council to initiate a street vacation, which is what is accomplished from this resolution. This resolution itself does not vacate the street. It instead, think of it as opening up the conversation to potentially vacate the street. So this would set the date of the public hearing and put all of the everything in place and start getting the ball rolling for us to potentially vacate and solicit public comments for council to choose via ordinance whether or not you would like to. Included in your packet, we have a copy of the full code section related to the vacation of streets and alleys. At this time, I would encourage council to review the criteria and not necessarily make comment regarding it because we have not yet held a public hearing. So at the conclusion of the public hearing, that would be the most appropriate time to make comments regarding the potential vacation of Jefferson Street and whether or not you are or not in favor of it. And then we also have a overview map provided by Gray and Osborne of the street which we are discussing, which is directly adjacent to the proposed Foothills Trail parking lot and the recently installed restroom. There has been some conversation whether or not this street vacation would require an amendment to the binding site plan, which includes all of the stretch of land through 410. Our city attorney has confirmed that it would not require an amendment to the binding site plan. So the future process would be after approving the resolution, council has between 20 and 60 days to hold a public hearing. And then you can choose via motion to say no or via ordinance to say yes. Once it is approved via ordinance, the street would be vacated. And if you chose not to vacate the street, I think it's important to mention that the proposed bollards that would be next to the trailhead that you've seen in some of the different schematics, they wouldn't be able to be permanent. So if the road continues to be a public right of way, it's important that it continues to allow for traffic. So we would be able to potentially close it from time to time for special events, which I'm assuming is where those original concepts came, kind of like a festival street that could be closed. But the permanent vacation would be able to reallocate this to open space or some other type of public use. The city of Buckley owns both portions or property on both sides. So there is no other property owner that would be looking for compensation. It would become land owned and operated by the city of Buckley.
So I think most of you may be familiar with the term street vacation. Maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, when there was a gentleman that wanted to put an arena down by Safeco Field to bring back the Sonics. I believe his name was Hanson. I can't remember. And the land was Occidental Avenue. They were asking for a street vacation so they could put in this arena and an entertainment district, and it ultimately was not approved by the Seattle City Council. So vacation means doing away with the use that it is now. And I would say I love this map created by Gray and Osborne, but they did not capture a new multi-sport court in there. It's missing.
Yeah. Draw it in.
So we will forgive that error. Any comments and questions regarding not in favor of, not against, but of what was just presented by the city administrator? Councilmember Burbank.
I just, in reading through what you provided, a vacation of streets and alleys, I had a question on the section on protest. So 13-25-090. So when it says, if 50% or more of the owners of the abutting property file written objections to a city council initiated vacation with the city clerk, the city shall be prohibited from proceeding. So when it says owners of the abutting property, does that mean every single property owner all the way down Jefferson? What does abutting? I don't know what abutting, what does that mean? Like, what does that entail?
That is just the city of Buckley. Otherwise, it's surrounded by public right of way, which is 410 River Avenue. And then the only abutting property owners is the city of Buckley.
Oh, okay. So it's not anything further down Jefferson.
So that code, no,
Got
that
it.
code
Okay,
section
thank
doesn't
you.
apply.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on this proposal? Hearing and seeing none. We have our city, our Gray and Osborne engineer here.
I would,
Appropriately attired.
I was gonna just add something for consideration. So the Jefferson Avenue right of way as depicted, sans the sport court that does not quite yet have the cornet or the hornet in the middle, has not been painted yet. And I didn't want to show it without it.
I accept that.
Well, okay then.
Nice.
So there are the considerations that are in the, certainly within the code. But there's obviously just some other issues that are food for thought. As Courtney mentioned, you know, there's been talk in the past about bollards on the 410 side of the trail. Yes, it was, I think, associated with when we had some permutations of the parking lot. But the intent there was to make it safer. So the trail crossing there, so you could be on the trail and go. We've got a TIB grant to make the Main Street crossing safer. This is a crossing. It's so that's a consideration where you can't just put bollards on a public right of way permanently. It's not legal. So the vacation would give the city the flexibility to potentially build the parking lot and potentially add those bollards because it's land that the city could do with. If the right of way was vacated, the segment between 410 and the parking lot, if it were constructed, would essentially be a driveway on city property. It's not public right of way. Another consideration in vacating rights of way is preservation of utility easements. I will tell you, there is a sewer line in Jefferson Avenue that needs to remain. So an easement would potentially need to be recorded over that. And then, and I'm not here to discuss all the permutations, but if you look at the intersection of 410 and Jefferson, right now it does allow, if you were heading out to 410, you were allowed right now to take a left. Right now, you are allowed if you are heading from Main Street on 410 to take a left onto Jefferson Avenue. The vacation of this right of way doesn't necessarily change any of that, but if the parking lot were constructed and in the future, the city would have options. If, say, you thought it was need to be evaluated to see if it was safer to make that a right in, right out, so that you could not take a left out of there, you had to take a right, or you couldn't take a left in. There is a description, there's also across the street. Why the mapping places call it Wheeler, not Jefferson, I don't quite know, but there's across the street 410, same thing, that, maybe that shouldn't be a fully functional intersection that you can turn any way in or out. Maybe those should be rights in, rights out, because there are other places. If this is no longer right of way, and really it's accessing a parking lot as opposed to accessing the right of way, it's a consideration. It's not a necessity that it needs to change on what it is, but when you look at a criteria, whether a change of use or vacation of street or alley will better serve the public, I think that the traffic movements in and out and the safety of vehicles in and out of Jefferson off of 410 is something you may want to consider. So it's not a have to. I just thought I'd bring it to your attention that just because things are a certain way now doesn't mean they always have to be that way. There are places, other places on 410 with double yellow lines and pork chops. That on Chamberlain, there's a pork chop. There's other places on 410 where it's not fully accessible. Now those Chamberlain happens to be a right of way. That's where the RV place is. So I thought I would mention those ideas, just things to think about. I'm not trying to pile on everything on this, but just want you guys to know of options that we've been thinking about on the staff side that feel you guys should know.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? This is again establishing a public hearing and to hear from the public, which is paramount. Okay, see nothing else. So, Councilmember Sunstein.
One big thing is the fact that by eliminating the street, we basically eliminate one more bottleneck on 410. And that is one of our top goals, is to make 410 move.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving down around the table, any council member comments regarding this study session? Is it just me or what we got from our city clerk? This agenda was reduced by about 4 topics. No? I guess I saw things I didn't see. I thought there were 10 items.
Well,
Number 6.
it was still ambitious. And it took them
We
did what we had the other night at 8:30.
Yes.
we had some staff illness last week, so we weren't able to include two topics, but I don't think that it may have been 10. That tentative schedule, heavy emphasis on tentative. It's a working document, so I'll make sure to continue to provide updates on that as we move forward, but
Perfect. I think this was time well spent tonight on 6 items. Any other comments from the council? Hearing and seeing none, it is this call at 7:17 PM on the 7th of March. This concludes the Buckley City Council study session.
Yes.